We are calling to order the Town of Cary Planning and Zoning meeting for October 22nd. As always, we begin with adopting the agenda. I will note that under new business, we will be picking our next vice chair for this upcoming board year. I don't believe that it necessitates an amendment to the agenda. It just comes under new business. So does anyone have any other changes to the agenda, or can we get a motion to adopt?
I'll make a motion to adopt.
I'll second.
All those in favor of adopting the agenda, as I mentioned with the vice chair involved, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. The agenda has been adopted. We have regular meeting minutes from our previous meeting. We do not have any minutes from a work session that was canceled, so the same thing applies. If someone has any changes or edits to that, I would like to hear them. Otherwise, a motion to approve our meeting minutes from September would be in order.
I move we approve the minutes.
A second.
Is there any discussion on that then? Would all those in favor of approving the minutes please say aye?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? That motion also carries unanimously. The first case on our agenda for this evening is 18 REZ 14. Deborah Grannon is here to present that to us. Good evening.
Good evening and welcome to new members of the board. For your consideration this evening is a request to rezone property associated with the existing Triangle Aquatic Center. This is rezoning case 18 REZ 14. Property is located on 21.56 acres, which is highlighted here in yellow. It's located south of Carytown Boulevard and adjacent to Convention Drive, adjacent to the Carytown Center Mall. Just to give you a little brief overview of the history of the Aquatic Center, the original zoning was put in place for this property in 2004. There was what was referred to at that time an activity center concept plan, which laid out the approximate location of buildings and proposed future parking and other services on the property. The development plan was approved in 2006. It was constructed in 2007. And now, last year and this year, we've been talking with the applicant about an expansion and the associated rezoning that would be required. The property is located within a destination center according to the growth framework map in the Imagine Cary community plan. And beyond that, it's also in what's called a special planning area, or a SPA, specifically the Eastern Cary Gateway Special Planning Area. And as one of the policy statements in the Imagine Cary community plan, there are specific policy statements that discuss the opportunity for allowing expansion of that existing Triangle Aquatic Center. Because the base zoning on the subject property is office and institutional and residential 40 and a small portion of RR resource and recreation, and because that old activity center concept plan is no longer the mechanism we use to consider this type of rezoning, the applicant is proposing a rezoning to MXD, Mixed Use District, and with MXD comes a preliminary development plan. This is not a zoning condition with this rendering, but this is what the applicant has submitted to help give you and the adjacent property owners a general idea about the proposed expansion. But what is before you is the preliminary development plan that shows the location of the existing building in the tan color, areas where expansions are proposed for administrative offices and an expansion of the building shown in yellow. And then this area where they're proposing additional parking, additional indoor and outdoor facilities, including an outdoor pool. With the proposed rezoning, there would be a maximum of 195,000 total square footage for the site, and this includes the existing building, an outdoor swimming pool, a maximum building height of 65 feet. They would request a maximum of 481 parking spaces. This is a request that includes some modifications to typical ordinance standards. With preliminary development plans, we will often look for applicants to build greenway connections. The applicant is proposing to provide the easements for required greenway expansions in the area, but not to do the construction. That would be something that would then fall to the town later. They're seeking a reduction in the perimeter buffer from 65 feet to 50 feet, and I'd like to explain that a little bit further. 50 feet is what's currently existing on the activity center concept plan. Because this is going through a rezoning, we're letting you know what the ordinance would require, and that would be a 65-foot buffer under the LDO standards. Because this property is located in a destination center, because it's an MXD zoning, basically the way that works is the applicant sort of writes their own zoning code. They design the specific standards that would apply to this property. So it's within their right to ask for this buffer reduction, and then you comment on that as to whether or not you feel it's appropriate. Staff has done an analysis of the request and looked at the Imagine Cary community plan and recognized that because this is an expansion of a regional athletic facility, this would encourage facilitation of that expansion, which was envisioned as part of the Imagine Cary community plan. By doing this expansion, it's also an opportunity to stimulate economic development, and that would therefore support both the work and the shop chapters of the Imagine Cary community plan. And then this also responds to the Engage chapter by providing additional recreational opportunities. This shows you the location of both existing and future proposed greenway trails in the vicinity and street side trails. The subject property is in close proximity to Cary Town Boulevard, but Convention Drive is a local street or private street. And this shows you that there are existing transit facilities associated with the Cary Town Center Mall, but we'd like to point out that these are in a bit of a state of flux. We do not know exactly how transit's going to work in this area. Lots of discussions going on, and as you know, the mall redevelopment is moving rather slowly, so there will be opportunities to revisit this at a later date. The site is impacted by stream buffers and floodways according to Cary's GIS maps, and therefore there will be a need to verify these features at the time of the development plan review. Property owners within 800 feet of the subject property were notified by mail of the proposed rezoning. This shows you the location of the sign posting on the property, and we did advertise the public, or not the public hearing, but this meeting on the town's website. Community feedback. There was a neighborhood meeting that had about 16 neighbors attending back in June of 2018. Concerns were pertaining to tree removal, maintenance of the perimeter buffers, lighting and noise from outdoor activities, traffic in Ivy Meadows, the potential extension of Trinity Road. When there was a town council public hearing back in September, we just had one speaker, an adjacent property owner, who had some similar concerns, and added also to that they wanted more specificity shown in the plan. Staff looked at this proposal, and we have noted that while we have some concerns which are addressed in the staff report, overall and on balance, we found that this request is consistent with the Imagine Cary community plan, specifically because it supports the workshop and engage and shape chapters of the Imagine Cary plan, and because the Aquatic Center expansion very specifically aligns with the goals of the Eastern Cary Gateway Special Planning Area. At this time, I would like to turn the presentation over to the applicant so that they can make their comments about the request. And following the applicant's comments, both they and I will be available for your questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mike Kern. I'm the founder of the nonprofit Triangle Aquatic Center. I've been on the chair of its board for the last 16 years. Thought I'd take just a few minutes to give you a quick history of TAC, let you know what our mission is going forward, and then just a little bit more pictures of what we hope to be able to do to keep up with Cary's growth here. So way back May 6, 2002, 6 people sat around Panera Bread down at Crossroads talking about the lack of year-round public aquatic facilities in the Triangle. From that one meeting, 6 weeks later, I went ahead and incorporated TAC as a 501c3 nonprofit, and the journey began from there. We were really lucky about a year and a half later to get this 21.5 acres of land right beside the Cary Town Center Mall, which was ideal because of shared parking and it's right off a major exit of I-40, where a couple 100,000 cars pass every year. So it's really a good location to get this project started. The steel started to go up in 2006. The cement started to get poured in 2007. And after about 5.5 years of planning, we opened up on October 28th, 2007. And there were quite a few people. There were a couple thousand people, but representatives from the council, the mayor, Wake County Commission, Cary Chamber, banks, et cetera, et cetera. So exactly 2,000 days from that very first cup of coffee that we had at Panera Bread. So what's happened in the last 10 years? We survived the Great Recession. We opened up 3 months before 2008, created quite a few complexities for us at that time, but we managed to get through it, and we're now thriving. We become known as the largest nonprofit public aquatic facility ever built in the country without $1 of tax funding. We serve 450,000 people a year. We have one of the largest Make a Splash programs in the country that provides free swim lessons for financially disadvantaged families. We become the #1 destination venue for aquatic events in the entire state, larger than the GAC in Greensboro, as well as MAC in Charlotte. We're an economic engine generating over $7 million of direct visitor spending subject to hotel and meals tax. We have 100 jobs over there. We have a top 10 nationally ranked swim team. And after 10, almost 11 years now, we have experienced leadership. We started TAC from scratch, so we had to build all of that infrastructure in place. We serve quite a bit of Wake County, 10 of the 12 municipalities, with a majority here, obviously, in Cary. The issue we have now is about 2 years ago, we started to reach capacity, and we are at capacity today. So we began this planning process a couple years ago. Our focus is health, safety, and competition. Health, as we all know, obesity is a terrible problem that we have in our entire country, but here in North Carolina, 1/3 of the children are obese, not just heavy, but obese. Seniors have a hard time with exercise. Water is one of the best exercise seniors can do, and we have significant seniors who come to our facility. Safety, drowning is the second leading cause of accidental death in children 14 and under, and it's the #1 cause children 4 and under. And we have one of the largest learn to swim programs trying to drown-proof the triangle. And then competition, we have 33 public high schools, Wake County. We have 27 private schools, all have swim teams, all need a place to swim, and there's not enough water in the entire county for that, so we're helping meet that need. Wake County, all of their competitions are held at TAC, including the regional and state championships are held at TAC. 6 registered USA swim teams, and because of TAC as a driver, this community has become known as the 7th largest swimming community in the entire country, based on USA Swimming's data. So this is what the new expansion will look like. Our spectator stadium is absolutely packed. We need more room, so we're going to be adding 4,000 square feet. When we built TAC, we did not plan on having a swim team and other programs that we have today. We have 18 coaches on the swim team and no place for them to sit, so that's why the administration area is expanding. Likewise, when we built TAC, we didn't plan the swim team, so we had no dry land fitness area. So there's 12,000 square feet, going to be a high-performance dry land. And then the real issue today is we are out of water, and we need water, and that's the purpose of this rezoning. So we're going to be building a 50-meter pool outside to complement the 50-meter pool inside, the 10-lane, 25-yard pool inside, and the warm water instruction pool that we have inside. And with that, we look forward to growing not only this phase, but we have another 8 acres after this that we hope to be able to keep pace with both the Triangle and Cary's growing population. Thank you.
Thank you.
Members of the board, my name is Charles McDarris. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Bailey & Dixon. I'm volunteering my time to help Triangle Aquatic Center. I certainly believe in the mission and what they provide this community and have over the last 11 years. I think is really admirable what they've done. I think it has certainly been recognized by town leaders as well as the public in general. In putting the rezoning application together on the justification statement number 2, it asked for references of how this rezoning would be supported and fit in with the Cary community plan. Quite often with rezonings, you're trying to take a square peg and put it into a round hole. That is not the case with Triangle Aquatic Center. There were numerous references in the Cary community plan to a Triangle Aquatic Center and the expansion. I've put 3 pages worth of references onto the rezoning application, and I would just like to hit the highlights of a few of those items. Beginning on page 118, chapter 6, it specifically references the continuing success of Triangle Aquatic Center campus. Talks about the economic generation that it provides for this area. In the vision of the Eastern Cary Gateway, there is, of course, a vision of a vibrant center of sports and athletic facilities, including swimming and diving. As part of the policies and intent of the Eastern Cary Gateway, it sees that there is a future or further development of sports and recreation facilities, and says that the town will do all that it can to support those types of facilities. The town of Cary also sees this area as being a sports event hub for Wake County, and has promised to work with not only Wake County but the city of Raleigh. Of major importance, and I noticed that Ms. Grannon put in one of the slides, the reference on page 127 to the Cary Community Plan, where it references the aquatic and fitness campus of Triangle Aquatic Center, and specifically references the expansion and the need for expansion of that facility. The question is posed later in the Cary Community Plan and the Eastern Gateway Plan, how will we achieve our visions? And one of the bullet points on page 133 specifically states by town planners that there will be support of the expansion of the Triangle Aquatic Center, recognizing the importance of Triangle Aquatic Center in its swimming facilities to the community. Of course, there are general references throughout the rest of the Cary Community Plan that refers to the need for recreation, sports, and health for the citizens of Cary. And clearly, Triangle Aquatic Center is meeting the needs of the community through their senior programs, their Learn to Swim programs, and we believe that this expansion and this rezoning certainly fit within the Cary Community Plan. And we appreciate your time this evening and ask that you support the rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the staff or for the applicant?
I have one quick one. I appreciate the detail you went into, and I really agree with it. Admirable what you guys have accomplished. That very, very nicely done for the town. The outdoor pool, how close is that going to be to the nearby residents?
They have a requirement proposed for a 50-foot buffer, landscape buffer, and then they would have to be set back 10 feet from that buffer.
Okay, so 60 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Have we any other questions?
I have a question, Ms. Grannon. You mentioned that the staff had some concerns. I read through the report, but I didn't really see those
Just,
highlighted.
just in terms of, questions from the neighbors and addressing the specificity in the plan. Basically, what the neighbor had pointed out, they'd like to see a little bit more detail in the plan, a little higher degree of certainty. And we've, if the applicant had that level of detail at this point, I think they would have shared that with us.
Any more on this side? I'll move over this way. Yes.
I wanted to ask about the Greenways. I noticed on one of the pages you had a map that it appeared that the Greenway was proposed on one section there, but I believe that you said early on that we were going to, or they were proposing to not do that.
They are proposing to dedicate the easement. There's a street side trail existing and a portion of Greenway completed. And then there is a requirement for an easement, which the applicant has agreed to for this portion of the Greenway. With regular development plans, that's all they have to do is provide the easement. With activity center concept plans, preliminary development plans, we've always tried to encourage that, to make those connections. And the applicant has asked to be excused from that. And they can speak to the justification for it, but they have provided the easement or agreed to provide the easement. But they've called that out as a specific modification so that at the time of the development plan, we wouldn't hold them to building that as part of the requirement. So they have to ask for that as part of this process.
I think that would be my only concern with this. It would make more sense to have that greenway already completed with this proposal.
So that brings up an interesting question. How wide is the easement? And is that added to the buffer space behind where the neighbors are?
That is a good question, and I think it could meander through there, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, yes, it could overlap. We would
So-
still look for the planting in that area. We would still look to ensure that we're meeting the buffer standards, but we'd look for a meandering greenway through that area. But yes, you're right, that could impact that area.
Who constructed the existing easement that is shown? Did they construct that?
It's not existing yet. The easement's not been dedicated yet.
But what about the green portion?
This is existing.
Who constructed that? Or is it not constructed?
You want to speak to that? The town of Cary did. I'm going to let you speak.
Just a little bit of history of that. When we built TAC originally, we gave the land to the town of Cary, but the town of Cary actually built the Greenway for us, just part of their support for the project. And the reason we're asking not to actually build the TAC but still give the easement is that there is no plan, even though there's a dotted line up there, there's no plans in the near future to actually build that. And as a result, we'd be building something to nowhere. You just get to the end of that and have no place to go. So the two issues for us is we'd like the town to help support us by, we give them the land and they'll build it like they did last time. And two, we don't want to build a road to nowhere.
Okay.
By the way, you're free to take one of those seats there if you want. It'll save you from going back and forth.
So I have a follow-up question on the Greenway. I don't want to get lost in the weeds, but maybe the trees. It's calling for a type A, a 50-foot type A buffer. So I'm assuming that's an opaque buffer?
We don't use that term anymore, but it's our highest performing buffer.
Highest
It's
performing.
almost impossible to have something be opaque.
I won't use the word. All right, so highest
But that would be
performing.
our highest performing buffer. It would create a visual screen and block. And what we would look for at the time of the development plan is to make sure we've got sufficient plantings on either side of a future greenway trail so that we're meeting that performance standard. So if there's a greenway trail meandering through there, then we're going to look for denser evergreens, more of a hedgerow, if we have some sort of a meandering trail going through there.
I appreciate that, but, I'm thinking if you look at this from an overlay, if there's a 50-foot type A buffer, and isn't usually the easement on a greenway, was it 30 feet? Is it 10-foot?
The trail itself is usually 10 feet.
Well, the trail is
Then
usually
you've
10,
got-
but I thought
Then you're going to have maybe 10 feet on each
either
side of that.
So you're looking at 30, so it's potentially that in that 50-foot buffer, you have 30 feet of it that can potentially be open space. So in terms of any visual screening is the point I'm looking at. Okay, so that would be, so that creating that buffer between that and the neighbors, even though there's a 50-foot buffer, 60% of it potentially could be cleared. Okay, but that would be something the staff would be looking at.
Yeah, we'd have to work with the engineer for the developer at the time of site plan review and push hard to get the plantings on either side of that greenway trail to create that screening.
Yeah, that'll be a challenge, particularly if you only have 50 feet to work with. So it's a little bit of a concern, just, I know that, I can appreciate the applicant wanted to be consistent from the 50 feet that they started with, but as we go down, but I have a couple other questions that don't deal with Greenway. I'm trying to understand, and I support, this certainly is keeping with what's in the plan, and so this is more just out of my own curiosity versus whether the development of the tech center fits within the Cary community plan or not. It certainly does, but the nuance, so there's going to be, when it's built out, to be a total of 195,000 square feet, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, and so the addition is 100,000 square feet?
1,000, correct.
And so is that basically looking at the footprint? So as I look at the outdoor pool deck, is that part of that 100,000?
We're looking at the building area. We're looking at the total building area.
Would the building area include the outdoor pool?
I don't believe so. Is that correct? That's just the building, just the structures for the 195?
Our understanding was that the pool was included in the 100,000.
Do you want to confirm that, Robbie?
I think that's right.
Yeah, so this adds, what it says in the staff report is this would add 100,000 square feet of building area and a new outdoor pool. So the way I'm interpreting that is that allows for the building area. Because right now, today, we have about 77,000 square feet of building area that had some flexibility with it. So doing some administrative additions that were allowed, that would take it to about 95,000 today. And so their request is to add 100,000 square feet of building area and then allow the swimming pool. In addition to that is the way the report's written. That's my understanding of it.
Okay, so then that and with the 65-foot maximum height
For the building.
for the building, and maybe I'm just a little slow, but something doesn't add up. So you're looking to add 100,000 square feet of built area plus the outdoor pool area. So you're adding 100,000 square foot of building, conditioned space onto that site? Yes, no? I mean, that's,
Conditioned space.
well, in terms of the building, that's all.
What do you mean, please, by conditioned space? Meaning that's.
Heated pool.
Okay.
Yeah, walls, ceiling.
Yeah,
That's what I mean.
habitable,
I'm
habitable.
sorry,
Okay,
not from a
okay.
planning condition, but from a,
That's
So-
what I was going with.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
And it would be a zoning condition, that would be the maximum size of the addition,
so the addition's going to be bigger than the existing buildings that are there on the site now?
right?
Okay.
Could be. Doesn't mean it definitely will be, but it could be. And it also allows, with that 100,000 square feet, that includes area here on the existing building. So there's the existing facility with expansions. And then this area where there would be the rendering that you saw, the applicant's rendering and the outdoor pool, maximum building square footage, 195,000 for the whole site.
Okay. I understand. Quick question, adjacent to that at the mall, what is this came up in another case, the maximum height on the Cary Town Center, was that 55 feet or was that 65 feet?
It was not clearly specified. It was not to exceed the
Not-
second story of the existing Hudson Belk building, which was approximately somewhere in the 60-foot range.
Okay, thanks, I was just looking at that for a reference point. And understanding that because the applicant hasn't submitted really a site plan, it's really just really a bubble map of here's where things are going to be going. If the applicant was to a future date, and I shouldn't say the applicant, maybe just with the town, when somebody puts a bubble on a pool, is that considered to be part of the conditions or part of the building space, or I guess it depends on whether it's a permanent bubble or
That
a
would be
temporary?
that would not be considered a building unless it were a permanent structure.
Okay, because I know we had a case a couple of years ago where somebody was putting a bubble over a pool. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Anything else on this side?
Just one small point. On the outdoor pool itself, and if you said this earlier and I missed it, sorry, but the lighting for that, is that a condition or?
Those are things that would be governed by the land development ordinance.
Okay.
So they would have a maximum height, and they've not asked for any reductions to the LDO standards. So you've got a 35-foot plus a base, 2-foot base. And you've got shielding requirements, so you'd have to have the light downward.
Downward
facing,
and
yeah. Right.
not impacting
So we do
the
have
neighborhood.
strict regulations in the ordinance that regulate that. Will there be some light pollution? Yes, of course there will, as there is with any non-residential use where there's trees currently. But we have regulations that monitor the intensity of the foot candles around the perimeter, and they'd have to submit a lighting plan at the time of the development plan review.
And then just following up on that, and I don't know what the hours of the usage will be at night, but I would assume noise would fall under that same program.
We do have regulations. We do have a noise ordinance that's in place. We do not have any zoning conditions that apply to the hours of operation, but there are decibel levels that are monitored by our police department. If somebody's exceeding a certain decibel level, I believe it's 60 decibels, then an adjacent property owner could call in a complaint and we would investigate that.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions over here?
Yes, good evening, Ms. Grant. And I see that the building height as part of this rezoning is 65 feet. What's the current height on the site? The current maximum height?
There is, I don't believe the preliminary development plan or the activity center concept plan specified that, but the ordinance then would have regulated that. So if it was within 100 feet of a residential neighborhood, it would have been 35 feet.
Okay, so it is going substantially higher. And then another just point of clarification. On the preliminary development plan in the top left, there is parking under development. The
Correct.
parking under development, is that independent of this rezoning?
Yes, that's correct. That's eligible. There was a certain number of parking spaces that were allowed as part of the original activity center concept plan. And when a number of those spaces were lost due to the mall redevelopment and the sharing that they had, the agreement that they had with the mall, the development plan was able to be submitted to do some parking expansion here as part of the existing entitlement.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Any other questions on either side of the panel? Would someone care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I move that the board find case number 18 REZ 14 is consistent with the comprehensive plan and all other applicable plans for the reasons set forth in the staff report, presentation, and discussion by the Planning and Zoning Board.
Do we have a second for that?
Second.
Want to kick off a discussion?
Yeah, just a few comments. I mean, obviously, this TAC is mentioned multiple times in the Cary Community Plan. It's a big driver for this area. I think especially with the disappointment we went through with the other proposed development in the mall area, this is something that will be, I think it's really good for the community. I do have one concern that I want to get registered, but it's not big enough to make me want to deny it, and that's I'm hoping something can be worked out on the buffer, but I don't think it's enough to not agree to this, but it is a small concern.
I think it's an outstanding plan. This facility's certainly very valuable to the town. I know many citizens who use the facility or have children that use the facility. It's just been an outstanding addition. And this is a much-needed progression in the services that have been provided through the years. So I applaud the plan and think that it's very well done, and I hope that the town council will support and approve it. One thing that was interesting with regard to the buffers, in this particular situation, we were discussing how you make the buffers thicker and et cetera. Perhaps the plan not to build that Greenway at this time is in the best interest of the adjoining neighborhood, because it's going to give more trees between this facility and the neighborhood, and that seems to be the most practical plan to protect the adjoining neighbors. So I'm very enthusiastic about this.
Any other comments on this motion? Any other discussion?
The only comment I'll make is I support, because when I look at it in terms of, does it fit within the plan? It does overall, and I think there's a lot of good points. I agree on the Greenway, et cetera. It piques my curiosity, and I guess it's not placed here, but I am trying to figure out where the other 80,000 square feet in the 65 feet of building is going to be. But that's not a question, I guess, for the Planning and Zoning Board. I'll leave that to council. But, I mean, just when I look at the conditions and, asking for 100, for the additional space and the height, I mean, it just, what was laid out in terms of what we saw on the preliminary plan was, addition about 22,000 square feet of space. But, it's down the road. So.
Anything else?
I'll add.
Yes.
I also think it's a great plan that we bring our son there for swimming lessons, so I think it's really great for the community. I echo concerns about the lighting and the noise, and the height if I were to be a resident of that area. So I would just hope that there would be enough provisions to where that wouldn't be a nuisance, but otherwise I think it's great.
One additional point, I believe, I'm very familiar. I was on the town council when the shopping center was first built, and I represented the adjoining neighborhood. So I've been through this before in a different context, and I'm very sensitive to the adjoining neighborhood. And the lay of the land is such that the adjoining neighborhood is actually physically higher than this facility, and that's sort of a natural buffer situation, which I think helps this proposal a great deal and makes it easier for them to both light buffer and sound buffer.
Yes.
So, like I said, I'm very familiar with the adjoining neighborhood.
I want to add to that with a little historical context, and I understand that the question before us is, does this application at this point in time, is it consistent with the Cary Community Plan, period? But some of us have seen several applications for this area come through, and we have seen the neighbors lined up essentially saying no buffer is big enough or opaque enough or high-performing enough for us. This will not happen. One person spoke before town council, and it was about asking for more detail, and one of the neighbors mentioned something, I believe at the neighborhood meeting, about just the upkeep of the buffers, not about the size. To me, that says a little something about the neighbor, that TAC has been a good neighbor compared to maybe some of the other things that possibly were playing. I don't know, but for the lack of folks to come out and say, we need a bigger buffer, we need more, that folks didn't do that, says a little something to me, just in the context of the past history. Does anyone else have anything? Well then, would all those in favor of 18 REZ 14, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. That motion carries unanimously. And before we move on to our second case, in my haste to get through the earlier parts of our agenda, I don't know why I was so hasty, but I neglected to welcome our newest member. It's Nicole Samuel. We have a new board member for this year, and it begins this board term. So welcome, with my apologies for not doing so sooner.
Thank you very much.
He puts you
Glad
to
be
work,
here.
and then he
I guess so. I passed a test.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, we're glad to have you here. And we're also glad to have Mary Bierman here to speak with us about Act 6 LDOs with Christine Sunday. Ms. Bierman, good evening.
Good evening, Board. Before the presentation tonight, I just wanted to make a couple of comments. As you will be seeing a new face. As you know, changes to the land development ordinance are brought to you as act items, and they're needed to implement various aspects of the Cary Community Plan. And the changes that we bring forward cover a variety of topics that cut across a number of different departments through the town, not just the planning department. Excuse me. Tonight, your presenter will be Christine Sunday. Christine is a transit planner with the Transportation Facilities Department, and she is the expert and the primary author of the Transit Facilities Amendment, which is the primary amendment in Act 6 that you'll be seeing this evening. So I did want to take a moment to introduce you to Christine, and also just to let you know that as we move forward with more Act amendments, that you can expect to see even more new faces, all in the spirit of One Cary, where we will be bringing forward more folks that are the technical experts and subject matter experts on many of the items that you'll be seeing moving forward. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Christine.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good evening. So, Act 6 includes 3 items tonight. The first item updates the existing transit facilities requirements to provide clearer, more consistent guidelines to meet current transit needs. The other 2 are minor technical amendments and include item B, which is needed for consistency with state legislation, and item C provides for telecommunication towers that are needed on a temporary basis. In 2016, Wake County voters approved the half-cent sales tax to fund public transportation investments in the county. As part of this investment, Cary is embarking on its largest expansion of service since its inception in 2001, with new and expanded transit service as identified in the Cary Community Plan, the Wake County Transit Plan, and the Western Wake Comprehensive Operations Analysis. With this expanded service, the town personally will be pursuing a bus stop improvement program over the next few years, constructing and upgrading stops for new service, and also some existing service with higher demand. However, to fully make these plans a reality for Cary citizens, we must progress the vision contained in these plans to law in the LDO. Item A updates the existing transit facilities requirements to optimize Cary's investment in public transportation. Bus stops with appropriate infrastructure and amenities encourage transit usage by providing safe and comfortable places for pedestrians to wait for transit away from grass, mud, and traffic. They are also accessible for persons with disabilities, which meets federal law. It is important that as our community continues to grow, develop, and redevelop, that transit needs are considered as part of the development plan review process. High-quality bus stops should be constructed and placed into service efficiently as new developments open, and future development should seamlessly integrate transit service into its design when appropriate. So there are 3 key changes to the existing ordinance. The first is to apply transit requirements comprehensively. The current ordinance applies only to a narrow list of uses, not addressing many other transit destinations as well as existing services. The proposed amendment will require construction of transit infrastructure, dedication of transit easements, or both, to apply to all development plans, reuse redevelopment plans, or when non-conforming transit facilities are affected along current or planned transit routes. Transit requirements applying to more development will connect more people across Cary. The proposed amendment also establishes a threshold to trigger these transit infrastructure improvements that are directly tied to bus stop spacing. This provides clearer expectations for when improvements are required. And it also provides for more certainty and expectations with which the development community has been asking for. Lastly, most of the detailed access and infrastructure specifications and guidelines will be moved out of the LDO to the town's standard specifications and details manual. This results in a cleaner and easier to follow ordinance while providing for more flexibility to adjust to changing needs and practices in the technical aspects of bus stop design. The manual will also be updated in connection with passage of this LDO amendment to be clearer, meet federal requirements, and to tailor the level of stop amenities to existing or projected demand of the bus stop. Item B amends the definition of subdivision to comply with recent amendments to state law. the legislature created a new category of subdivision that is exempt from town subdivision requirements, such as dedication of right-of-way, applicable to certain subdivisions of 3 or fewer lots. And lastly, item C helps ensure continuity of wireless coverage during maintenance of cell towers and other structures like town water tanks by making it easier for wireless carriers to find sites to locate temporary towers. The temporary towers must be removed once the maintenance of the permanent structure is complete. And so this concludes the staff presentation, and staff is available for questions.
Thank you very much, and welcome. Any questions on this side of the room?
No.
How about on this side?
Actually, I have a question about,
Go right ahead.
going back to item A and the transit facilities. Can you clarify, I believe that you mentioned in the presentation that it would require the construction of facilities for proposed routes. How exactly would that work for a development? So say you have a proposed route in a given area. The developer would then be required to build a transit stop, even though there's no transit that's going to be operating at that stop?
Right, so if there is a development plan coming forward that is along a proposed, a route in a proposed plan, so the Cary Community Plan or the Wake Transit Plan, then the developer would be required to construct the stop if it's meeting that bus stop spacing threshold.
Okay, would the developer have an option, and Lisa might need to help me with the term here, where they can pay instead of putting it in?
Payment in lieu?
Payment in lieu. Would they have that option, or would they be required to put the facility in?
I believe that they would be, they do have the option. In most cases, we're talking about a bus stop boarding pad, so a concrete boarding pad.
Okay.
So usually if you're out there doing that type of work, economies of scale
Oh, right.
makes it easier to do at the time, but yes, that would be an option.
My only concern with that would be that we're putting stops in where there really isn't a stop. So you have a nice transit facility or waiting area for a transit that's not going to be servicing that location. I just think that might be cause some issues with people looking for, transit stops. That was my only concern with that, so.
How long can a temporary tower stay up? Is there a time limit?
Yes, I think we've got that in the ordinance at 60 days from the time the maintenance or the work that's being done on the tower is complete. They'd have to take the tower down.
Okay.
I have one semi-bus stop question, and then sometimes, having been on an HOA board for a long time, you bump into this now and then, where, you've got these developments, and I know this has nothing to do with the town, this is Wake County, but school buses don't go into developments. They stay on the main 4-lane road, and all the kids are stuck standing on that corner. Is there any kind of coordination? Because I know some areas have kicked around the idea of using gathering spaces and trying to coax the county to pick their kids up there away from the big areas. If we're going to have bus stops, which are going to have a measure of safety as far as the traffic is concerned, was there any kind of, has anybody brought that idea up that perhaps there might be some outreach to see if, especially in these bus stops that may not have bus service, that
Right.
we could use it in that vein as well?
Not that I'm aware of. One concern with that, as far as the public transportation system, is that whenever there's a passenger at a waiting bus stop and there is fixed route service along that route, we stop for it. So if it is a student that's waiting for a school bus and not the fixed route bus, that would add time to our routes that didn't need to be added. So it might be less efficient. But no, I don't believe we've had any discussions with the school district about something like that.
Just curious. Any other questions?
I had one quick one. For
By all
the transit, for the huts or the pads, whatever it ends up being, this is for new development only?
New developments or redevelopments. So when they're coming through the redevelopment or development plan process, this would apply to them.
So there's no retro here to try to fix current places where they might need a hut or a pad or whatever?
Not unless they're coming through the process and this LDO is triggered. Otherwise, the town is undertaking a bus stop improvement program on its own to go back and upgrade some existing stops that do not meet the current standards.
Okay.
Have we any other questions? Have we a motion?
I'll make a motion. I move that the board find LDO Amendment Act 6 is consistent with the comprehensive plan and all other applicable plans for the reasons set forth in the staff report, presentation, and discussion by the Planning and Zoning Board.
Have we a second?
A second.
Any discussion beyond this?
No.
It just makes sense. Yeah, it's really nothing beyond that.
Okay. Any further discussion at all? Then would all those in favor of approving Act 6, items A, B, and C, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Nicely done. We have completed our our cases now. We will move on to new business, which is the appointment of a vice chair. Our current vice chair is Brian Eads. And every year, of course, at the beginning of the board year, we select or we nominate and vote on one. So I would open the floor to any nominations for the vice chair at this time.
I'll nominate Ryan Eads as vice chair to continue on.
Any other nominations? Going once, twice, I will close the nominations. This could be pretty simple. Would all those in favor of the sole candidate for vice chair, Ryan Eads, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries about as unanimously as I guess it's going to. And so we carry that unanimously. Welcome again. Congratulations for the upcoming year. Has anyone anything else before we move to adjourn? No, then, would you like to send us home for the first time?
Sure. How do I do it?
Motion to adjourn is all it takes.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
We
I'll
are
second
adjourned.
that.
Thanks very much.
This has been a production of Cary TV. Visit the Town of Cary's website at townofcary.org.